With Jurgen Strand-Larsen being Vitor Pereira's main number 9, Wolves have a massive conundrum with regards to the other 4 strikers around the club. Sasa Kalajdzic, Fabio Silva, Hwang Hao and Goncalo Guedes could all leave this summer. So let's speak a bit about those 4 players and who I think Vitor Pereira will keep and who I think will be leaving the club this summer. First up, and perhaps most controversially, is Fabio Silva. Now, obviously a club record buy when they did sign him for £35.6 million, and generally it just didn't work whatsoever. He scored a few goals against the Albion in lockdown, but generally he just didn't really do much for Wolves. Since 2022, he's played 91 games on loan at the likes of Rangers, Anderlecht, PSV Eindhoven, where he did win the Cup, and Las Palmas last season, where he had his best season in professional football. Now, he's still only 23 years old, which I find absolutely insane, and the fact that you can probably demand a really good fee for him off the back of his best season is very intriguing to me. Now, because of the loan fees they've received from those 3 clubs that I mentioned, aside from Las Palmas as well, Wolves could potentially be in profit from Fabio Silva here when they sell him this summer, or if they sell him this summer, and that's what I want to discuss. Let me know what you think, Wolves fans, if you think you should sell Fabio Silva this summer. There's a lot of Wolves fans that want to see him given another chance because of sort of how well he played last season for Las Palmas, and think he could be a real asset because he's a sort of a striker that Wolves don't really have. He's very different. I don't think he has the pace or the sort of intensity or tenacity to play Premier League football for Wolves and be a starting number 9. But I think you could do far worse than having him as your backup option. But will he want to be a backup option when so many clubs are in for him? The likes of Atletico Madrid have been touted for him, which I don't see that happening. But I do think that he will, command a move this summer from a few teams. Now, for me, I think Fabio Silva, the one thing that really impressed me at Las Palmas is he often finished the chances he got. Las Palmas didn't create a hell of a lot of chances, and he did finish a high majority of them chances that he did receive. Now, I think it's really intriguing in terms of him as a footballer. I just don't think he suits the way that Wolves want to play. And like I said, I don't think he sort of suits the intensity of Premier League football. I do think if Wolves can cash in on him and ultimately make a profit over the last few years and sort of cut their ties with him, I think that would be the smartest decision to make for the club personally. Also, when you look at PSR and stuff like that, I think it makes a massive sort of bit of sense to do so, and I think it makes sense for the club to do so. They can also then obviously go into the market and improve on players and sort of buy those reinforcements, that depth we need. Wolves need a fullback at the moment. It looks like they're going to sign Marc Poubiet, already done for around €15 million, but they also need midfield depth, in my personal opinion. I think they could do with depth sort of across the squad and potentially even another number 9 if these 4 tend to leave the club, or if 3 of them tend to leave the club, and you can't really rely on just 2 of them. So let me know what you think about Fabio Silva. I think he's probably the most controversial one of the 4. I would personally let go of him personally, just because I don't think he is Premier League standard just yet, and I think he suits sort of European football a lot more. Let me know what you think, Wolves fans, about Fabio Silva, and let's get into the next player. Next up is Wang Hao. Now, it's a really interesting one with Wang for me because we've seen what he can do in a Wolves shirt. I think he got 16 goal contributions in 31 games in 23-24. Scored some lovely goals against Brentford as well. And generally, he looked really, really sharp in that season. But for me, he looks miles off it now, and he didn't really look sort of unbelievable last season. He didn't really look great at any point last season, if we're being completely honest, really. I think his market value is still relatively high, as you can see on screen there, €11 million reported. Now, Birmingham City have been in for him, and I think that would be a massively sort of brilliant move for him, because I think he'd be brilliant in the Championship, but also for Birmingham City. What a coup that would be, what a statement signing that would be. I don't think that will go through, because I think the fee will be a bit too excessive. But I do think that there will be suitors for Hwang Hao. I think Wolves did make a bit of a mistake or miss a trick when they didn't sell him to Marseille last summer off the back of his best season. I do think that would have been a really smart move, not only for the club, but also for him again. I think he would have been really good and really well suited to Ligue 1 football. And I do think he would have been really suited to Roberto De Zerbi's side as well. Now, I think it's really interesting with Wang Hao. Obviously, he suffered with injury this season, so you can't say he's been dreadful, but he hasn't really been on it massively throughout the season. And, injuries, especially at his age, 29 years old, it becomes a bit of a concern if he continue to pick those up. And I do think that he potentially could. I do think in terms of his versatility, being able to play off the left, being able to play up front, he's also played a few games off the right as well. I do think that counts for something. But personally for me, again, I think Wolves should cut ties with him. I think the players that ultimately hold that value, I think are worth cashing in on. And Fabio Silva is absolutely one of them. Obviously, he's got his age behind him as well, so you can get more for him. But Hwang Hao, I think personally, there will still be a few clubs sniffing around him. And I think if Wolves can get £10 to £15 million. That is an absolutely brilliant deal for Wang Hao. And again, for the club and for PSR reasons, and also allowing them to bring more players in. And also, I don't think he's ultimately that key to what Vitor Pereira wants to do as a manager and where he sees him in his side. I just don't think he has the attributes that Vitor Pereira looks for, or that particular style of play that Vitor Pereira looks for. Let me know what you think about Hwang Hao in the comments as well, because I think this is a really interesting one. A lot of fans do want to keep him because of how good he was in the 23-24 season, and some of them feel if he can stay fit, then we can see that form again. But personally, for me, I think Jürgen Strand-Larsen's got that number 9 position locked down, and I don't think he's good enough as a left attacking midfielder, especially when Wolves have brought in Fer Lopez and John Arias for both of those wide attacking midfielder positions this season. So let me know what you think about Hwang Hao, Wolves fans, and let's get into the next striker. And next up, we got Goncalo Guedes. Now, another player that for me just hasn't really connected with the club or the fans and almost didn't really want to move there. Now, he was meant to move to Wolves about a year or two before he actually did, highly sort of touted around Europe then when he was playing for Valencia as a really talented footballer. But he ultimately didn't. I think the move came a bit too late and he just didn't really want to be there. He didn't feel like he sort of fit in, and I don't think any of the Wolves fans particularly took to him, and rightly so in my personal opinion. I don't think his performances have warranted that of a £27.5 million player. They just haven't. Obviously, he's been loaned out to Villarreal, he's been loaned out to Benfica as well, and ultimately that's because his performances haven't been good enough, and also his attitude, quite frankly, hasn't been good enough. I've seen him smiling in a few pre-season photos, and I just couldn't believe my eyes. But I think with Goncalo Guedes, in all seriousness, I think you can still get a decent fee for him. Nowhere near the £27.5 million mark, in my personal opinion. I think Wolves could get 15 to 20 for him, potentially 20, but I think 20 is unlikely. And if I had to guess, I'd say about 16 to 17 million pounds for Guedes, just because I think he's hitting his prime age now, 28 years old. You can still get a decent fee for him. People have seen what he can do. Obviously at Valencia was really, really good for them. Was okay for Benfica. I mean, he didn't really put up ridiculous numbers, but in terms of, performance-wise, he works his socks off there. We've never seen that in a Wolves shirt, to be quite honest. But generally, Goncalo Guedes, for me, I think is a no-brainer of a sell, again, because Wolves can get a decent fee for him. Again, he's a bit versatile. He can play off the left, can play through the middle. But I just think with the two signings that Wolves are made in wide areas, also Jean-Rick Bellegarde and Rodrigo Gomez being able to play in those wide areas as well, and a few more players in the squad that I'm sure I'm missing out. I do think that, again, it's a no-brainer for me for Goncalo Guedes to be sold this summer. Obviously, his contract's up in 2027 as well, so while he's still got 2 years left on his deal, I think it makes sense, well, just under 2 years left on his deal, I think it makes complete sense to get rid of him now, instead of waiting for another year, maybe loaning him out or keeping him around the squad, and then he's got a year left on his contract and you lose him for a lesser fee. Let me know what you think about Goncalo Guedes. I personally think Wolves should sell him. Let me know what you think, Wolves fans, and let's get into the final player in Sasa Kalajdzic. And finally, we have probably the most unlucky striker you've ever seen in Sasa Kalajdzic now. He's 28 years old now, and he's had 3 ACL injuries in the past 5 years, which is just absolutely ludicrous. And I really do feel for Sasa Kalajdzic, and I would love to see him flourish in a Wolves shirt this season. Now, Sasa Kalajdzic's stock has massively fallen because of his injuries. His market value has almost plummeted from what they signed him for. I think spent £15.4 million in total, the deal for him was. And ultimately, he's barely played, barely kicked a ball. Obviously, went on loan to Frankfurt, injured there as well in the February. Signed in, I think, the 7th of January and was injured around the middle of February for them as well. And just generally was, probably the most unlucky footballer we've ever seen. Now, for me personally, especially with the way he's played in pre-season and the fact that his market value has plummeted, I think Kalajic is a keep. I also think he's very interesting in regards to sort of him and Larsen as profiles. They're not too dissimilar. So I do think if Vitor Pereira, we know he loves Jürgen Strand-Larsen. I think having sort of two profile players that, know the system and also will just basically seamlessly slot into the system in Sasa Kalajic and Jürgen Strand-Larsen, I think Wolves should keep him. Now, like I say, there's a few factors why they should keep him, mainly because his market value, because also they're not going to command too much of a fee for him. He's still got 2 years left on his deal. And ultimately, I think, there is a player in there. We've all seen it, at Stuttgart. That we've seen there's a player there. He's just extremely unlucky. And there's no one that I want to succeed at Wolves more than Sasa Kalajdzic, to be quite honest. I really do like him. I think he's worked so hard to get back to where he is from all these injuries that he's had to suffer. And again, I would love to see him have a redemption season for Wolves. Obviously scored the other day against Santa Clara in the friendly. And he took it really well and he just moved quite well. And he looks like he's sort of lean, a bit more lean perhaps, and he's sort of in his movement, he looks a bit more swift and agile. So I would like to see him get another chance at Wolves. And I think he should, to be honest, because he hasn't really had a chance at Wolves. I mean, if we just take a look at his career here, it's just absolutely ludicrous, really. He's played one Premier League game for Wolves there, and he's played 13 games in all competitions for Wolves there. And ultimately, he's not got a bad record when you look at it. 4 goal contributions in 14 games for Wolves. It's really not bad, and I do think that Sasa Kalajdzic is one of those players that does deserve another chance to play for Wolves and deserve a chance and has a place in this squad ultimately. And also being that second fiddle striker to Jürgen Strand-Larsen will enable him to stay fit, you'd hope, and will sort of decrease the likelihood of such a freak injury happening again, because people have this sort of perception that he's injury prone, and he really isn't. He's just had absolutely horrific injury 3 times, and that's just sort of probably the most unlucky thing we've ever seen. So I would love to see Sasa Kalajdzic get another chance at Wolves. Let me know what you think, Wolves fans. I'm sure most of you will agree. I think some of you obviously will be wary and will probably just tar him with that injury-prone brush. I don't personally do that, and I wouldn't personally do that for Sasa. But let me know what you think about that. And also, let me know what you think about all of the options in this video, because I do think there's so many players and so many forwards, especially in this squad, that you just can't really predict what's going to happen with them this summer. Now, if you did enjoy this video, I would really appreciate it if you would like it, comment below, because it really helps me and I love interacting with you guys, and subscribe to the channel more importantly, as we are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the Premier League 25-26 season starts. It's a massive hill to climb, but I'm sure with your support we can absolutely achieve it, and we can make sure that going into the season we're going to have so much content coming out, so much sort of success on the content hopefully as well, and growing a really big community of football fans. So let me know what you think in the comments below about these 4 strikers, and I will see you in the next one.